I just waiting on the final. Okay, everything is fine? Okay, sir. All right. Good morning, everyone. Let the record show that we have a quorum present, and I need to record an apology from one committee member, Mr. Austin Harris, the representative from Prospect, who is being held up dealing with a constituency matter, so he will be arriving a little late. So this morning we're continuing our hearings on the multi-annual pension reports that have been published via the website of the Department of Labor and Pensions. And this morning we're going to deal with British Caymanian / Colonial Pension Plan. I could ask the Sarge to bring the witnesses who are present into the hall, please, so we can swear them in and seat them. And we have to make sure that we maintain and abide by the law of social distancing, so we'll do our best to accommodate the three people locally.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give to this honorable Legislative Assembly shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do not expect you to talk, but
I don't think I'm able to give evidence, Mr. Chairman. I don't think I'm able to give evidence. I don't have the knowledge.
oh, okay. Well, then you don't need to be sworn. You're not. He's going to be given all the evidence through just here.
Yes.
To advise him.
Yes.
Okay. All right. No problem. Thank you, Robert. Good morning to the witnesses. First of all, let me welcome Mr. Larry Gibson on Zoom. I think we have our technology up and running now, at least on one TV, so we should be able to proceed. We also have in-house present Mr. Neil Wright from the Pension and Life Operations Manager of British Caymanian Insurance, and he has brought with him his two attorneys, Mr. Buck Grizel and Mr. Richard Annette of Stewart's Law. Are we okay electronically?
I can hear you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay, sir.
But I cannot see you.
I think they're working on that aspect of it. Well, as long as you can hear me, that's the important part, sir.
Yes, I can hear you very clearly, sir.
And we can hear you very well, and I can see you. So I'll be able to read your eyes and lips while you won't be able to read mine. So I have a little advantage. Temporary though it may be.
Okay.
But as you are been made aware, sir, we are dealing with a series of multi-year reports that have finally and eventually been published by the Pension Office on their website. And so this is the first time that we're getting an opportunity to delve into how the private sector pensions are being managed and reported and everything else, because we think government being the regulator, we have a responsibility to keep a check on what's going on behalf of your membership. So I will invite, and we're dealing with your company, British Caymanian Colonial Pension Plan. So I'll invite Mr. Chris Saunders, a member of the committee, to lead off with the questioning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
One housekeeping, sir, for you, Mr. Wright, and you, Mr. Gibson. When you answer the first question, for purposes of accurate records, please identify yourself by name and position so that it will be in the Hansards of the House. You only need to do it the first time. Okay. Mr. Saunders.
Good morning, gentlemen, and thanks very much for coming. Just to expand on what the chairman said, is that we're actually reviewing the reports and also to ensure that the Department of Labor and Pension, as required by law, because this committee does have oversight on all government departments, are pretty much doing their job. And in order to see both sides of the full equation of the report is one of the reasons why we're asking the actual pension providers to also be here. So it gives us a complete picture. So just to kind of set the tone, we consider this for more informational purposes because it's been more than the last time the actual table report was back in 2008, thereabouts. And no report has been tabled since the financial crisis of 2008. So we're hoping that this session is more informational than anything else. So it's not just to put you, there's no gotcha moment, there's no ambush or none of that kind of stuff, but rather to kind of help in terms of public education. Because one of the things that is missing is the whole public education that goes with this. And now with the recent change that the government made to the pension law that allows people to withdraw early, a lot of people are now having the uncomfortable conversation in terms of where they are with pensions and everything else. So this is pretty much what we're trying to basically get a better understanding for the public. So I just want to set the tone so it's not anyone looking to do anything crazy from that standpoint. So, and also to allow the public to get a better understanding of what they can expect in terms of pension providers, and also ways that you guys can think that we as legislators and policymakers can actually improve the entire process. So this is what we're looking for, because at the end of the day, the reports that are published goes up to June 30th, 2016. That is the past. The past is the past. There's nothing that we can say here or do here that's going to go back and change anything in those reports. But the most important thing for us is how do we improve the process going forward? How do we improve the public engagement going forward? So this is the purpose of what it is that we're trying to get here today. And hopefully at the end of the day, you guys will find it hopefully just as constructive as we do. So with all that said, my first question in terms of trying to understand, how would you consider, or what is it that you look at in terms of the colonial pension plan? Like, what is ultimately like the culture, the goals, the vision? I mean, how do you guys see your role in terms of what it is that you do in terms of the pension? Just to kind of give the public a better understanding of exactly what the colonial pension is about, and that is managed through BritCay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll take that. Larry Gibson, Chief Operating Officer. We regard ourselves as having a very important role to play. Pensions are important from a national standpoint for many people. The pension pool of savings for many people are their only pool of savings for retirement. So we think it's very important to have a properly run and properly managed regime. Embedded in that should be a very significant public education component to a pension, the management of pension funds. And that's something I can speak about later in terms of what we do, our philosophy, our level of engagement, and how important we see that. We have an awesome responsibility in that we're really stewards over these funds so that people are able to save in a structured and systematic way so that they can have an income when they no longer are in the workforce and enjoying a regular paycheck.
So in terms of you mentioned something about your philosophy. What exactly is the colonial philosophy?
As it relates to the management of pension fund,
That is correct.
our philosophy, yes, our philosophy is that the more educated and the more engaged member we have, the better for us. That's for ourselves and also for the member themselves. Um, we Our goal is to offer a timely reporting, accurate record keeping. Our goal is to ensure that really we are partners with our members as we for the mutual benefit of our members going forward.
In terms of, I think you're located in Bermuda and the fund is managed in Cayman. Can you just kind of walk us through your governance structure in terms of how that entire thing is managed from when contributions are made to basically how it gets into the investment? Just to kind of walk us through that process.
I will defer to Neil, who is there to walk through the actual process and the actual flows. And then at the end, I will come and add some additional information. Neil, could you start from the contribution monies coming in?
Good morning, everyone. Neil Wright, Operations Manager for Pension and Life. Oh, okay. Sorry, should I repeat? Okay. Neil Wright, Operations Manager for Pension and Life. Good day, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your question from the member. Just to start from, in terms of contributions being coming in, the process works as follows. Any contribution, to make it easier, I'll give an example of a specific month. So for the month of May, any contributions received for that given month by an employer between May 1st to May 31st is remitted by an employer to the pension plan. The requirement by law is that contributions must be remitted by an employer by the 15th of the following month. So for this specific example, it is by June 15th. How it works is such that the employer would then remit those contributions directly to our bank account and submit to us a copy of a corresponding spreadsheet indicating how those contributions should be allocated per member. Once those contributions are received, they are then allocated for each plan that we have on our book of business and further divided down into allocated per member. Prior to the processing or the updating of that member's account, we would first have to receive the NAV for that given month. In all particular case, our NAV, for example, for me, is received on about the 5th or 6th business day of June. So, for example, we may receive our NAV by the 8th of June. We update our systems with the relevant NAV. It's updated overnight. And just for clarification purposes, we do monthly valuations. So our NAVs are produced at the end of the month. Once that information is uploaded to our system, we can then start the process in terms of allocating those contributions that came in for the month of May to the member's account, update their balance with those contributions, and then we do the processing of any redemptions or withdrawal for that given period. Once that is completed, and that's completed, sorry, good, okay, sorry, thank you. That is completed by the end of June, let me clarify. By the 26th of June, our administration team then completes the process of allocating contributions, doing any redemptions. That is then passed to our finance team for reconciliation of the account. In each step of our process, there are checks and balances to ensure that the contributions remitted on behalf of an employer for those employees are accurately allocated to the employee. That's the reason why after the processing of those said accounts, check and balance or reconciliation of those accounts are done by our financial team to ensure everything is properly done. Once that has been vetted and approved, our finance team would then send instructions to our fund manager to indicate that we are liquidating X amount of units for this particular value. Upon receipt of that information, we then would receive the cash equivalent in order to pay the said members.
Thank you very much. Just following on from what you said, in terms of when the contributions come in and the NAVs are being calculated, like, I understand that different members have different allocation in terms of where their funds, cash will be placed. So some may go in cash, some may go in investments. When is that process normally done in terms of allocating to a member's account in terms of, like, whether it be the tranches or the different places that the money go? When is that process done?
Once the NAVs for that given month are uploaded by, say, the 5th or 6th business day, that's when that process starts in terms of going plan by plan to allocate those set contributions based on the investment profile or managed profile that that member has selected, or in our particular case, we also offer members the ability to self-direct. And for further explanation, that simply means that on our plan, some members are able to actually create their own portfolio mix based on the individual funds that we offer our members. And that is usually guided to those members who are a bit more investment savvy to do so.
And when you say that you're guided, is that, each individual member of a company who's part of your plan has that option, or is it the company who they work for that has that option?
No, it's each individual member of the plan that has that option to self-direct or create their own portfolio.
And do they have that option every month, or is it given on a 6 months or a biannual or annual basis? Because it would seem very complicated if they could do that every month.
The member is allowed to make those investment changes per month via our online web portal or by physically submitting a form to us. We recommend to our members that they do not change on a monthly basis, simply because pension is long-term business, and you need to see where the market is moving before you make those type of changes. That's the reason why we have, from the very onset of a plan or even a member joining our plan, we have education sessions set up. So a new group or new members are required to attend a pension enrollment session. Either we go to the employer's place of business to meet with the members, or they attend our weekly Tuesday session held at Britke House. At those sessions, we explain to the member we introduce ourselves to our members. We also go through the legislation, the changes, the pension law changes, the pension law itself, so that we can educate our members in terms of the benefits and options available to them. We also go through the investment options that we offer our members. And in that session, we actually make recommendations and assist those members in terms of choosing their investment options.
And you say that is weekly, and that is communicated on an individual membership basis? Because I don't recall seeing a lot of information in the media or stuff from your company. Just all done on an individual basis?
That communication is done through the employer directly to the administrator of that employer's pension plan. So once an employer is hiring, let's say, for example, a new employee, they would communicate to us that said member is going to join the plan. We then arrange for that member to attend our fixed enrollment sessions done once a week. So you can have multiple members from multiple plans attend that session, because the information we are relaying to them is the same, because it all deals with the pension law. Or depending on the volume, we would arrange to go to that employer's place of business to conduct a pension enrollment session.
And how many individual members do you currently have?
We currently have, may I check my notes just to give you a
Absolutely.
precise figure, please? Thank you. As of the end of March, we had 13,042 members.
And what is your average attendance at these chooser sessions?
It varies, it varies from week to week. The maximum seating that we have in our boardroom that we conduct those sessions are 30. So it can range from as little as 5 to as much as 25. It all depends on how many persons are being enrolled. And of course, if you're bringing on a new plan and it's a sizable plan, we would stagger those enrollment sessions.
And that cost is part of your general administrative cost, or is that an additional cost that is billed to individual members who attend?
That is part of our general administration cost. There's no additional cost that is billed to our members for that service that we provide.
Okay. Let me give you, for instance, if I was working for a company and I was part of your plan, and I left for a number of years and worked for a different company who had a different pension plan, and then I came back to work, I went in to work for a company who also had your pension plan. When I come back into that new company, am I considered a new member, or do you go back and reconcile my membership and my account with the existing account that I had from the first time?
Before I answer that, I just want to clarify, make sure I understand the question correctly. And I'll use myself as an example. If I was working at company A, I had a plan with Britke. I left, worked with someone else who was not employer who Britke wasn't provider of. I subsequently then, you're asking if I return to a same employer or a different
A
employer?
different, doesn't matter.
Okay, so employer
I
B.
become
Yes.
become a member of your pension plan. Is it cumulative or is it maintained separately?
In that instance, if you come in into another employer, you come in as a brand new member under that employer B. However, the member then has the option to consolidate their account, their previous account, with their new account. And that's one of the reasons that we do the enrollment session, so that when a member comes back in, we can then explain to them that you do have our record show you have a previous account, and it's actually in your best interest, therefore, at that point in time, to merge your account, because then you don't pay duplicate fees. However, some members do want the option to keep it separate, depending on the balance in their account. Because of how the law was set up prior to that in terms of the ability to get your funds, whether it's above CI 5,000, below CI 5,000. But to answer your question, to the point, yes, they can merge your account, and we advise them that to do so. So when they do join, they indicate on the enrollment form for that new employer that they want to merge their previous account.
And if they don't merge the account, they pay two administrative costs. They pay the administrative costs on the first plan, and they pay the administrative costs on the new plan that they're coming into as a new member.
That's correct, because they are registered under the old plan. It's separate and apart. There's two actually distinct plans. So they therefore need to merge that account in order to avoid paying duplicate fees on that account.
Okay, and for instance, the legal advice that you brought with you today, that cost is going to be applied to your administrative costs to membership.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No. Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Okay,
the cost of the two representatives who are accompanying Mr. Wright today is a company expense. It will not be charged
okay.
to the individual pensions.
Mr. Saunders?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the witness. How many locals, you said how much local staff do you have right now employed?
We currently have 9 local staff employed.
Okay. Earlier you were saying something about members having the option to use your website portal to basically make the changes and everything else. How did our members notified that they have that option?
They're notified of that option upon enrolling in the plan, either when they attend the enrollment session.
And roughly in terms of presentations to businesses, how many on average do you get per month or per week?
Just to clarify, are you asking in terms of persons attending
Yeah,
enrollments, or-
because since we've been sitting here and this is going live, I'd received messages actually from 3 businesses that have basically said that they reached out in terms of trying to get presentations to their employees. And they haven't heard anything yet, so that's why I'm just trying to understand. I mean, because I think it's important, and this is where the managing expectation comes in, where if you only have 9 staff doing it and looking at your membership, which between 2016 and March, based on the numbers that we had provided, your number of members went up by 52%. And the question is then, in all of that, considering that you have been a growth in your number of members since 2016 by more than 50%, then the question is, do you have, well, I'm trying to figure out in terms of, do you have sufficient local staff in order to basically manage the number of customers you have? So in other words, as you increase your membership, did your staff complement increase to basically manage those relationships better? Because I noticed in the 1 meter report that you had earlier this month is that you had over 6,000 applications for redemptions, and you were basically asking the public to be patient. And I know that was carried in the newspaper, but in terms of just trying to understand from the public standpoint. So, and like I said, this is what we're trying to understand. We do recognize that this is an extraordinary time to some extent. So people would expect things to be a little bit different, because you wouldn't be equipped to know that, well, 6,000 people are going to be showing up, looking redemptions, that kind of thing. So we do understand that, but we're just trying to understand in terms of the overall, what the public can expect from a quality delivery standpoint.
To answer your earlier question, yes, our staffing complement has increased. Upon my arrival, or starting with the company in 2008, we had, and I want to say 3 staff. I stand to be corrected, so if that, I can always go back to verify my number to our present composition of 9 staff.
We understand that we're talking a
Right,
lot
yeah.
of ancient stuff here,
Right.
but so we're not going to hold you to, you know.
Okay, understood. But to answer your question regarding the COVID or the emergency withdrawal, one of the things that we did in order to meet the demand, because it wasn't only and just to clarify, we had over 6,000 applications approved. We had in excess of 9,000 applications submitted, of which some of which were duplicate applications, because members, I think, got a little excited, clearly, in terms of the opposite. So you may have a member submitting their applications 6 times. So that didn't put a
But is that because you didn't respond, or?
No,
Oh.
no, that wasn't because we didn't respond. That's because, actually, I dealt personally with a member who submitted an application. And I used 6 times because one came in at, let's say, 9:55, then another at 9:56, 9:57, etc. So that is what some of the things that we had to deal with. And in order to meet that demand, what we did is that we hired 11 temporary staff to deal directly with the applications. And we redeployed existing staff members from other strategic business units as well in order to assist. And that was 7 additional staff within the company to assist with client calls, emails, etc. coming in. And just to give you an example, we did a report last week, just so I can give you an accurate number. Just last week, in just 1 week alone, we had gotten over 705 phone calls and 423 emails. And that was this is a slow period. So you can imagine when the law came out, in that 1 week, we had close to, and just memory serves me correctly, over 2,000 calls in that first couple of days coming in. So those are the steps we took in terms of resources, purposes to ensure that we try to keep up with responding to members. And that's the reason that we indicated to members to please have some patience with us It certainly wasn't because we did not want to respond to you right away, but we were physically impossible to do so. And I forgot to mention as well, we also had 3 dedicated receptionists just for pension.
In terms of the applications, have you guys started paying out customers yet? And if so, what percentage would you say that you have paid thus far?
We have not started paying members as yet. I got confirmation from our finance team that payments would commence tomorrow. And if I may, I can just look at my numbers to let you know what that first batch of payments would look like. So based on our records, just for the month of May, we had 6,200 payments to be made. In the first batch of payments, we anticipate paying 3,454 persons, which amounts to in excess of $43 million. So in all, as of right now, as of our records, as of June 11th, we have 6,460 applications that are approved for payment with an estimated value of $73 million to be paid out. And bearing in mind, these are estimate numbers because we are still updating our records and processing payments as we speak.
The NAV that you guys use to calculate what members are getting paid, what months did you use?
We are using the May NAVs. I do want to explain that initially when we process the members' accounts, in order to try to get out the payments as quickly as possible to members, we did, because of the fact of the NAV timing, because our May NAVs we only actually just received on the 8th. So we did a processing of members' account from April, using the April NAV, and then what we plan to do, and this is the process that we are recalculating the members' balance as of the March. So those members who paid in the first 10 business days will get their payment based on their April values, NAV value, and then we do a calculation of additional payment due to them for the balance as of May. But that was done simply to ensure that we were able, because of the volumes, to get payments out to members as quickly as possible, because we understand the need of, in these difficult times, members require their money as soon as possible.
In terms of just following on from our earlier, when the contributions are made and they're allocated to members, in terms of the actual investment decisions now, in terms of where those funds are invested, what is the process? I mean, who makes the decision in terms of where to invest members' money?
I will leave that to Mr. Larry Gibson to answer that question.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the member, when members are enrolled, they actually make choices as to how they would like to have their funds invested. We have, on our platform, we have, I think it is 12 individual investment options. And that's for those who understand the markets. For those who do not wish to make active decisions, we have what we call 3 managed profiles: a conservative, a moderate, and an aggressive risk profile. In the Cayman Islands, about 50% of our membership are in actually the managed profiles. Those profiles are overseen by our investment policy committee, where we manage the risk, we manage the exposure. We would actually make changes to the weighting in those profiles based on markets, the outlook for markets, etc. So you can either use managed profiles that's professionally managed, or you can do actual individual investments in the select individual funds from the 12 we offer on our program. So that allows flexibility for the members, those who are more in tune with the markets, those who are more aware, who follow the markets. They would want to make decisions themselves. Those who are less aware would select a risk profile that's professionally managed.
I have one question. Are there any investments in the Cayman Islands opportunities included on that investment platform?
At this particular time, there are no Cayman funds on the platform for the Cayman Islands at this particular time.
Quick question: the investment policy committee. How many members are on that committee, and where they're located?
Basically, we have an investment policy committee. I think there are 7 people. We have, there is myself, I chair that. We have a deputy chair, and we have an investment analyst. These are all qualified chartered financial analysts. Then we have the controllers, financial controllers. So we have the financial controller of pensions. We also oversee it for our life. So we have the financial control of our life. We also, from a group level, have a group general counsel who sits on it. So that's in effect the membership, and we have a couple of our senior business leaders who also sit on the investment policy committee. They meet a minimum of 9 times a year. We try to meet monthly, except for the summer months. It always becomes kind of difficult. But we meet a minimum of 9 times a year. We have really a set policy, set procedures. The investment policy committee has a terms of reference. And it talks about the structure, the functions, conflicts of interest, our process for monitoring funds. And let me say, a key part is not just to create an investment platform and leave it there for 30 years. We constantly monitor the funds. There's procedures for funds to get on our platform. There are procedures for when funds start underperforming, and there are procedures to exit funds from our platform. The terms of reference for the investment policy committee is reviewed annually, and the last time it was reviewed was the 22nd of January.
Are there any legal impediments to having Caymanian participation in the investment portfolio?
When you
local markets?
in terms of local funds on the platform?
Yeah. Yes.
There are no express, but we do have requirements in terms of liquidity, the ability, the reporting of funds, the liquidity of funds, those sort of requirements that we do have.
Okay.
But
They don't do any
from a practical
physical investment, only through funds.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, sir. My apologies. I wasn't
No.
intending to interrupt you, sir. My apologies.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure whether you were asking a question, but the one point I want to make is that liquidity and diversification are huge issues as well, because just as you're able to subscribe for investments, it's just as important that you have adequate liquidity. And what we're going through right now is a significant case in point. Like, a quick back of the envelope calculation is, if you look at the Cayman Islands with this, if everybody withdraw the maximum, you probably are looking at a exodus of maybe somewhere 25 to 35% of the whole pension savings pool. And if you have, let's say, you have a substantial investment in a building or something like that, may not provide sufficient liquidity. So those are sort of the things you have to look at as well when you look at local investments. But at this particular time, there is nothing that precludes it, but there is a criteria that we generally have.
So one of the things I noticed in looking at your financial statements for the period December 31, 2019, which also included 2018, is that there was no maturity analysis on the investments. And that's one of the things I was actually looking for, because at least it would give us some idea of when you're looking to break some investments, what the impact would be. Because naturally, if you put an investment off for 5-10 years, and then you basically have to go and break it, now that's normally a penalty or something that goes with it. So that's one of the things I was trying to kind of get an idea of, that maturity analysis on your investments, but that wasn't included in your financial statement. So just the question in all of this then is, what impact, I mean, in terms of some of those investments there to break, I mean, what kind of penalties were you looking at for some of those early withdrawals or basically liquidating some of them?
Yeah, honorable member, I don't have that particular report that you're looking at, but generally speaking, you have what we call the Cayman cash that may have some long-term, what we call laddered bank deposits in it. Most of those other investments are in liquid funds, so they would have frequent liquidity. Some of them may be as much as daily. Some of them will be weekly. Some may be monthly. I doubt it's any. Most of them will be daily. So those funds will be fairly liquid. But that is something we can look at further, and I'll be able to answer you more specifically. I just don't have sight of exactly what it is you're looking at right at this particular time.
Apologies, Mr. Larry. No, it was a colonial master deed Cayman Islands year ended.
Right.
That's what I was actually looking for, the audited financial statements.
Right. Okay. And that is audited.
Yeah, this information would have been provided to our local regulator, and by virtue of this committee having oversight of it. No worries, not something that we're going to...
We would have it. I just don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, no, but
that's
what I was saying is, looking at the financial statements, I was just looking quickly, like in terms of maturity analysis, which wasn't there. And so that's one of the things, I mean, we will take up with the local regulator, Department of Labor and Pensions, to ask them to, going forward, to make sure that financial statements at least include a maturity analysis, so people can at least have an idea in terms of, how far out some of these decisions go. One of the things that did jump out from the audited financial statements was your administrative fee. Now, I realize that it's actually a recharge in terms of an amount from Colonial Pension Services. I'm just curious in terms of how the cost allocation or how that recharge mechanism work in terms of what goes into the pool of those costs.
Honorable Member, if I may, can I come back to you on that point, because I want to make sure I'm answering your question correctly, and I'll get somebody to pull that report to you so that there is clarity in what I'm answering and what answer I'm giving back to you.
Absolutely not a problem, Mr. Larry. And like I said, the whole purpose of this is more from an informational standpoint, so that's fine. And I mean, you can always provide that later. That's fine. One of the
Okay.
things, in terms of one of the things that our local law requires is an actuarial evaluation every, I think it's 5 years. When was the last time?
No. Yeah, let me say, basically, Mr. Member, and I thank you for the question. The actuarial, what we have is a defined contribution arrangement. In a defined contribution arrangement, assets equals liabilities at all times. Now, the Act called for an actuarial valuation that relates, and it still does, that relates to the 2006. It calls for actuarial valuation every 5 years. We went back and forth, and an actuarial valuation really does not relate to a defined contribution report fund. We went back and forth with the regulators, and they determined certain criteria. And in the answer to your question in the first instance was the last report was January 1 of 2013. With the amendment, and this really, as it relates to a defined contribution fund, it really was more something of akin to a funding report that really talk about replacement values or what have you. But that was submitted. With the changes to the Cayman pension law in 2016, the requirement for an actuarial valuation for a defined contribution plan no longer existed. And we do actually have a memorandum from the department. I'm not sure in 2016 whether it was still the DLP or what have you, where they came back and said that requirement as a result of the amendment to the 2016 amendment, actuarial valuations for defined contribution were no longer required.
Thank you very much. And that is one of the unfortunate areas, or one of the unfortunate changes. And the reason being is that, like with any law, when it's originally written, it's kind of written with the information that's available at a time period. I mean, going back to the 90s, where the stock market was one way, then in 2008 financial crisis, things would have changed. And one of the things originally when that came about was to kind of look at the adequacy of whether the 10% contribution would have been something that should have been maintained, or maybe at least for us as policymakers, being able to look at that and have an idea, wait a minute, based on the returns that we're getting now or the forecasted returns, we'd have an idea where we can go to the general public and say, well, guys, based on this forecast, it appears that maybe over the next, say, 4 years, we have to probably increase the pension contribution by 0.5% on both sides, if this is what it is you want to. But at least having the analysis done would have been useful, and that was the original intent. Now, it's a bit disappointing that, I mean, that is gone, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, the law has been changed, but for where I think it would have added value to the members, because one of the things that we emphasized yesterday, and just looking back at it for the purpose of the listening public, and this is the point that we made to the regulators yesterday, is looking at the introduction of this law. It clearly says the law applies to pension plans established and maintained for the benefit of employees in the island. And it is that culture where we want to emphasize back again the benefits for the employees, because we need the information done where we can start looking at certain trends that we can go back and say to the employees, based on what this pension provider said, this one have said, and this one have said, and this one have said, here's what ultimately that we need to do. So it is short-sighted, but it is what it is. But at least I would like, I mean, even if some companies volunteer to undertake that exercise, so at least they can say to members, well, at your current age right now, and based on what you have returned thus far, if you're looking to retire, this is what you probably will. And at least even then, they can probably make the decision to increase their own additional voluntary contributions. But that's the kind of information that we think would have been useful to members or to the employees. So, I mean,
Actually,
Hey, Mr. Stewart.
can you hear me, honorable member? I've
Yes.
lost
Yes.
the member.
yeah.
You can hear me? Okay, I lost you for a minute. I just wanted to make a couple comments very quickly, sir, if I may. Firstly, there was a Mercer report that was done, and I don't know if my colleague Neil would actually have that in his papers with him, but at the time, it's actually said that 5 and 5 was not sufficient from a national standpoint to provide sufficient retirement funding for the members. And that was, I want to say that report was maybe 10 years ago or close to it. So even then, there was a recognition that the 5 and 5 would not be sufficient. And I just wanted to dovetail. One of the reasons why we try to do annual reviews with our members, because not only do we just go there and we say, okay, here's your balance, here's your statement, thank you very much. We actually, there's a huge educational component to that where we talk about these sort of issues. Are you saving enough for retirement? Are you structured right? What should you be doing? How can you increase your retirement nest egg? What is the importance of additional voluntary contributions? We do that actively, and that would, particularly when we first started, that was a huge part of our business model, because education is so important in these smaller markets, in these what you call small island developing economy type environments. It is so important. So to that point, we share that we share that view. But there was an actual report done by Mercer that suggested that the 5 and 5 contributions would not be sufficient, and they even made a recommendation as to what would have been a reasonable increase and how to adjust it over time.
Yeah, I am familiar
I
with the
do
Mercer.
apologize
Yeah, no, that's fine.
if I ran on too long.
No. And like I said, this informational purposes, because I can say to you, Larry, and maybe this is not the proper thing to say, but based on the analysis that we have seen, your company isn't one of them that scares us. So I can tell you that off the record. So I don't want anyone out there to think that at least I am losing any sleep over what it is that you guys are doing. Some others scare me, but that's a different story. But I can say that.
Thank you very much, though.
You know what I mean? So
Okay.
one of the things that we just want to, I noticed from looking at your financial statements, and again, I know you don't have them, but this is something you can probably get back. Just about all the different investments of Colonial in front of it. So I do recognize that, I mean, especially like the Colonial Pioneer Fund, like Growth Fund, Balance, Global Bonds, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But I noticed, sorry,
The also,
continue, sorry.
yeah, I just wanted to point out what we try to do in the major asset classes. we try to have an index options, which is cheaper cost, and an actively managed. And with an active management, there are periods of time where active management can add value. And then we have a robust process around the active management through our investment policy committee, where we hold a spotlight to all of our managers. I mean, even, we actually visit our managers at their place of operation to understand that to make sure that they're doing what they tell us they're doing. We do a lot of extra work and a lot of extra effort to try to provide a robust platform where we add value to our membership. And a fisherman will never call his own fish thing, but I think we do a very good job
Well, I can
in
say,
that regard.
well, I can say compared to some of the results that we have seen, like I said, I'm not losing sleep on this particular one, and I'm not afraid to say that. I mean, I'm a politician.
Okay.
This is my place to say.
Thank you.
One of the things, I noticed in 2018, you had basically, well, as with some entities in 2018, they basically took a hit. But I noticed some of your competitors actually did. I mean, in some years where you did well, some didn't do so well. But 2018 seemed to have been a rough year for you guys. I'm just curious in terms of what it is that would have caught you guys out in 2018.
I'm just trying to look at something very quickly.
And that's fine.
Yeah, I see. I'm just looking. 2018, we were down. Markets were down. The indices. The other thing too is that relative to our benchmarks, most of our funds outperformed the benchmarks. I.e., if the benchmark was down 10%, we might have only been down 9 or what have you. People don't look at that as good performance when you're down, but it makes a difference if you're down 5% when everybody else is down 10.
Well, what I can say, since I do have access to all your competitor information, some of them actually did well in 2018 also. So I don't want to get into I don't want to get it out there, but I mean, we're looking at all the years combined. So I'm not going to sit back and say, well,
that Mr. Member, that is something I could come back to you on, because it was strange. We were sitting here with, we did have short notice and we're trying to prepare. And there was just so much information and so much things to cover. We can come back to you in short order with that explanation. It just escapes me specifically now. But there's a lot of other stuff I have down pat that I don't look like you even going to go there. So
and that's fine.
That's the luck of the draw sometimes.
That's fine, Mr. Larry. And as we said, the purpose here is to start increase the public awareness of pensions, because at the end of the day, pensions are important. It is needed, and we're open from these forums and from this PSC session that people get a better understanding. And I feel good when I see your members now start messaging in questions to ask and so forth. It means that people are engaged, and ultimately that is what we want, because we do want more people saving for their retirement.
Yes.
We do want people increasing their additional voluntary contributions. We want people to recognize that saving 10% of your salary isn't going to be sufficient if you want to retire at a decent age. So those are ultimately the things that we want. And we're hoping from some of these lines of questioning that people at least have a better idea of who their pension providers are, who the faces are behind some of these decisions, and at least start actively engaging some of the services that you offer a little bit more. So that is ultimately what it is that we're looking to achieve here. And like I said, it's because these reports have not been published for so many years. So it's just more of a catch-up right now, so.
Right.
And that's really the purpose here,
Okay.
you know? I think that pretty much,
Understood.
as for the other stuff outstanding, I mean, you can email that to me separately. I will give your colleague here my business card. She can send that, and I'll share that with the members in terms of the other
That'll
stuff.
be excellent. And my
Yeah.
colleague will just double back to you so that we can have a list to make sure we capture everything
Yeah. No.
that I promise you.
The one final question I want to leave, and which in mind, is that some of the other pension providers have indicated that there need to be some changes to the investment profile or the investment regulations. In your opinion, do you believe that we need to make investment changes? And if so, what would you like those to be? And then more importantly, which is a final catch-all question, is there anything that we as legislators can do to improve the pension process to actually make it better ultimately for the employees and in our country?
Honorable member, what I would like to do is take you up on that. I would like to give consideration and maybe write you a note back so that we consider it rather than me just saying one or two things off the top of my head, which is always a dangerous thing to do once you are under oath.
That's fine, and like
But
I said,
I would.
to be honest, I really don't mind that
because he
approach.
wasn't sure you kept the
No.
Bible on your desk. But
I really don't mind that approach, actually, because that's a safer approach, and at least it says something that at least you're not the risk-taking type, and we don't want anyone who's a risk-taking type managing our
No.
people's money, so that's fine.
but
No, honorable member, from what you're saying, it seemed like we're aligned in our thoughts and
Right.
our organization are fairly aligned with what you're thinking. And we want the best for the industry and we want the best for the membership. So we will actually be happy to, assist in that regard, however we could. And we would like to give considered and constructive feedback and have the opportunity just to ponder it a little bit.
yeah, that would be much appreciated, Mr. Gibson. And you would have gotten emails from the clerk for the committee, so you could just email your note to the email address that your notification came
Oh,
from.
yes,
Okay.
Mrs. Webb. In
Yes.
fact, she's been very responsive to all of my queries. So
Okay,
I want
sir.
to thank her for that.
Yeah, one final question from us. We believe that we have extracted from the pension administrators in evidence yesterday that they are going to make a concerted effort to get the 18 and 19 reports done before the end of this calendar year. Have you submitted your statutory reports for 2018 and 2019?
I will defer to my colleague there, Neil.
Just to clarify, are you referring to the annual filings that we required? And if that's the case, yes, we have.
Okay.
And it was done on time as well.
Yeah, but I just want to put it on record so that we don't get back later, somebody trying to shift blame,
Of course.
But
Understood.
thank you very much, Mr. Gibson and Mr. Wright. It has been a very helpful and engaging exercise, and we are grateful for your participation. And as you said, Mr. Gibson, we're all on the same page in terms of wanting the best for the membership, and we also recognize that if your company isn't doing well, the membership is not going to do well. So we certainly will
Right.
look forward to your considered input on some changes that could be made. Thank you very much for your time, sir, and God bless. Stay safe, stay home. Save a life. If you go out in public, wear a mask.
Thank you very much, sir. And it is our pleasure. And we'll look forward to working with you for
Thank
the
you.
mutual benefit of the industry.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Take a 10-minute break, and then we'll move on to Cayman National Pension Fund at 10:30. I'd like to call the committee back to order, and we're now going to be dealing with Cayman National Pension Fund, and I'll invite the Sarge to bring in the witnesses. And we have Mr. Stuart Jack on Zoom, and I see he's there, so we'll be back with you in a minute, Mr. Jack.
Yep, thank you.
I swear by the Almighty God that the evidence I shall give to this honorable legislative assembly shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Whenever you want to speak. Good morning, sir, and with your permission, I'm going to stick with a name that I can pronounce, Mr. Errol, if that's okay with you. Okay. And Mr. Stuart Jack, I want to say welcome to both of you, and thank you all for availing yourself today to give some evidence.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. The rule is the first time you're asked a question and you're going to respond, and we leave it up to you to decide who's going to respond to what question is asked. Just the first time, give your full name and your title, just so it appears in the Hansard records correct. So without further ado, I'll turn to Mr. Chris to start the questioning.
Morning, gentlemen, and thanks very much for attending this session of the Public Accounts Committee.
Thank you.
As some of you would be aware, in a recent ruling by the Ombudsman, a series of national pension reports were actually released in the public. And the purpose of this Public Accounts Committee, in terms of its oversight ability of the government department, primarily of Department of Labor and Pensions, and looking at their operations, the members think it would have been best to also invite some, all of the participants that actually goes into the report, the National Pension Report, to kind of see exactly what it is that we can do to improve the process, and also at the same time educate the public in terms of what is that we think we want them to get a better understanding of pensions. Off the bat, we believe that pensions are important, and we believe that organizations such as yourself play an important role. What we're open to get from this public accounts session is more informative than anything else, information gathering, but also to educate the public with regards to pension, the pension plans, and understand a little bit better, and also the importance of it. So off the bat, I can tell you that it is not an ambush or any kind of, we're looking to do any tactics or anything like that, but it's more information gathering and to really educate the public, and that is ultimately who we're here to serve. Your members, which are all employees in the Cayman Islands, are also our constituents, and Section 1 of the law is actually clear, where the pension plan was actually established for the employees of the Cayman Islands. So this is part of our oversight, but at the same time, our ability and our chance to put something in the public so they can get a better understanding of how the whole pension mechanism work. So that is really the purpose of this. So we're not looking to get into anything controversial. What I can say is that looking at the annual reports that were prepared, it is clear that a certain culture needs to be changed, and we're open that from this session going forward, we can start getting a little bit more of the culture change. So we do expect that there will be some changes from the supervision standpoint, in terms of them doing their job, but at the same time also give your organization, such as yourself, an opportunity to participate in the process of how we can better improve pensions, pension supervision, and also pension performance, and also, like I said, educate the public, which ultimately is who we all serve. So that is really why we're here today. It's not to, and then to better understand your operations too, your risk profile, what is it about your company, what is it that, why Cayman National does what it does, in this regard. So with that preamble, the first question in all of that is, how would you pretty much describe, I guess, the culture or the vision of your company with regards to managing pension, and ultimately, how would you measure success, and what is it that you hope to ultimately achieve as you participate in this process of investing people's money for the long term? Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, maybe I can start off by answering that. My name is Stuart Dack. I'm the President and CEO of Cayman National Corporation. Cayman National Corporation includes a number of companies, including Cayman National Bank as its largest operation, and a number of other businesses. As far as our pension fund is concerned, the main purpose behind it is to provide a pension fund for our employees. Although we have other members as well, that's the main purpose of our fund, is to provide pension facilities in accordance with local laws and regulations for our employees. The current pension fund was set up more than 20 years ago. Prior to that, we had what was called a defined benefit fund, but I think, as most members will know, it's almost impossible to maintain a defined benefit fund these days. And what we have now is a defined contribution fund, so that our members pay into the fund a portion, and the employer pays in as well into a fund. Those sums accrued are invested for the benefit of the members for long-term pensions. And I think all the pension funds on the island have their strategy really for long-term investment. And the way we invest our funds is very much dictated by the rules and regulations that are imposed upon us by the local pension law and regulations. So very briefly, Mr. Chairman, that's the nature of our fund. It's mainly for our employees, although we have other members as well. Most of those other members are people that we have connections with or we know well. So I wouldn't describe it as really an open public fund, but one that's really very much set up for the benefit of our staff and those within the Cayman National Corporation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jack. Through you, and I just want to put it out there in the public, because I know there are several companies, and I know people have some concerns with some companies, and I can tell you off the bat, looking at their financial performance and everything, your organization is not one of them that causes us any sleep. So I just wanted to put that out there up front, so at least to kind of set the tone in terms of what it is that we can expect. In terms of your membership between, you said primarily for employees, what percentage would you say is employees versus non-employees?
Okay, it's about just marginally below 50% of the funds in our overall fund relate to employees, and just about 53%, I think, is for others. But as mentioned, a lot of those have connections with us anyway. They're long-term customers or clients that require pension facilities. So they tend to be people that we have a relationship with.
One of the things that jumped out at us based on analysis that was provided to us, and I'd just be curious, some companies had struggled, some pension funds had struggled in 2018, but you guys seems to have did quite above average. So I'm just curious in terms of what it is that you guys did from an investment profile or from a culture that pretty much allowed your organization to, I guess, add a much better 2018 than some of your other competitors.
Yes, certainly, Mr. Chairman. I think there are two aspects to this. First of all, the fee structure that we have is very low. I think it's probably the lowest or one of the lowest on the island. And the reason for that is that we're running the pension fund mainly for our employees. And I think it would be fair to say that our fees that are charged are probably below our true costs. Running a pension fund as an administrator is actually quite a costly operation. We have particular systems that we have to run for the pension funds. Maintaining those systems and buying them costs money. We have a number of staff where the majority of their time is spent administering and running the pension funds. Again, that's a very costly aspect to this. So our fee structure is very low. I think it's probably very slightly over 0.5% per annum. Very low numbers. The biggest fees that we have within our pension fund fee structure are those that we pay to the external auditors that audit the figures, and also the fee that we pay to the pension board for our membership. So fee structure is one thing, and because our fee structure is very low, it allows our fund to perform well. The other thing is that we have, and Errol, my colleague who's here, he's with Cayman National Securities. Cayman National Securities, in conjunction with an investment committee, which is made up not only of Cayman National staff, but also some external members, do an absolutely first-class job in managing our investments. As I mentioned previously, Mr. Chairman, the nature of a pension fund is very much to look at long-term investment. And, for that reason, we take that long-term view. It's certainly not appropriate to look at short-term returns in pension funds. But if you look back over our history, back to inception or the last 5, 10, 15 years, then we have performed very well. And that's the nature of our investments. So we have an investment team that does an excellent job. By its very nature, it has to be conservative, the type of investment. And again, we follow a very conservative investment fund policy. But the other aspect of this, and one of the reasons that when one looks at other investments and looks at the pension funds and says that, or at least you identify that maybe you could have done better, is that we are constrained by the ratios that are dictated by the pension law and regulations as to how we invest the monies between cash, equities, fixed income. And we maintain our investments within those parameters, but still manage to do, I think, very well in terms of investments for our members.
In terms of your investment committee, how many members are on it? And you said there were also some external members. Exactly how many external members, or just a ratio in terms of what's in-house versus external?
Yeah, so we have 2 external members, both very, very experienced investment analysts. There are two external and 3 internal members. So, it's a good balance between the 2.
You said earlier in terms of the regulations changing the investment profile. What ideally do you think would be the optimum mix in terms of to maximize return? Sorry, in terms of to maximize performance for your pensioners, for your customers?
That's quite a complicated question. So at the moment we are constrained by the regulations. I think those need sort of minor amendment, and I think that is certainly an area that needs to go out for consultation. As I mentioned earlier, the very nature of a pension fund needs to look at long-term investment and also very conservative investment. So, I wouldn't want to put into this meeting now a recommendation as to how that mix or those parameters change. But I would recommend that going forward, any committee considering this takes input from the private sector. In Cayman, there are a lot of very experienced people in these areas. In fact, my colleague Errol, who's with us, who's with you in the LA, is from Cayman National Securities. He's far more experienced than I am on that matter. So maybe Mr. Errol, Mr. Chairman, would like to just speak on that.
Thank you, Stuart. My name is Errol Bawait. I'm the president of Cayman National Securities, and as Mr. Deck has explained, I'm also an investment committee member. I'm echoing Mr. Deck's comment that I don't think it's appropriate to right now put in any formal recommendations, that there are certainly some constraints in what we can and cannot do. That is all obviously reflective of the performance, and it has the potential of giving a skewed view of what a pension fund can truly return versus what the expectations are in the market if we just simply look at the headline news. So from that perspective, we operate within the mandate that's being set out by the Department of Labor and Pensions, and we adhere to that. To again echo Mr. Deck, because he has covered quite a bit on that aspect. The constraints are only in so far when equities really perform well, and that's when the constraints come in to your true allocation, which on the equity side, for example, are a maximum of 70% of the holdings. So from that perspective, those are risks that need to be accounted for, and that's something that could potentially affect overall performance. Not to mention the cost aspect of things, and as Mr. Deck has explained, on our side they're extremely low or on the low end compared to other providers. So we're doing it really for the people that are a member of the pension fund.
The committee was given evidence yesterday that there have been investment regulations under public consultation since 2016. Am I correct in what I've understood from you is that to this point you have not been consulted on changes to the investment regulations under the new 2016 law?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we have been consulted on that, but as yet nothing's come forward from. So we have given feedback to the committee on that, but so far nothing's happened on that. But I do think that is something that should be revisited with all the members. It's somewhat stale now, I think, the input that we've given.
In the committee, I think it's fair to say, was rather disappointed that we made all those changes in 2016. Part of the rationale given by the government at that time for making all the changes, I think if I recall it, we amended some 40 clauses in a 45-clause law, was that there was need to make adjustments to the investment regulations and criteria. And it is somewhat disappointing to hear that here we are 5 years, or now maybe 6 years later, and those investment regulations have not been crafted. And I guess the question I'm asking you all is what pressure are you putting on the government to get the changes that you figure are necessary to those investment regulations to enhance your ability to get returns for your members? Or is everybody waiting on somebody else to do something?
Mr. Chairman, we've gone back a number of times to ask when and where these changes are going to take place. So we have regular trustee meetings, we have regular investment committee meetings, we discuss this regularly, and we've gone back to, through the appropriate channels on a number of occasions. So I don't think there's been any lack of stimulation on our part to see a change in these regulations.
Is there any kind of cooperation, collective input from the private pension plans to government in terms of coordinating these changes, or is each pension plan responding individually to these plans?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chairman, there isn't a collective body. It's not like the sort of bankers association where there's an association that deals with government or deals with so it is really an individual effort back to those that are dealing with the changes. So in answer to your question, there is not a collective body. One other thing, Mr. Chairman, I could just mention, the question was, what about the culture of the pensions? One of the things that I think is important to say about our pension scheme is that we have an annual meeting. All members are invited, and that meeting is quite an active meeting. A lot of staff attend, a lot of the other members attend, and it is an opportunity for members to ask questions. So there is quite a high degree of transparency about our pension operation. And the members do have an opportunity to ask questions and make points, and we take those on board. One point that always comes up at those meetings is, how can we get more money out of our pension funds? And one of the difficulties, people are living longer. Retirement, the length of retirement is much longer than it used to be, and therefore the money you need for retirement is growing. But the one thing with a pension fund, you can't get out of it more than you pay in. So although the capital that is being paid in by people is being invested, and hopefully that grows, investment returns these days are not what they were 30 years ago. But I think the one thing that I always stress to members is you can't get out more than you pay in. And if we want to see larger pension pots for people to enjoy a longer retirement, the only way of doing that is to pay more money in. And that's either got to come from the employer or the employee. There's no magic to this.
Yeah.
So that's a significant problem.
One other question. You say you have an annual general meeting. When was the last one? And is there any communication to your members on a regular basis through a newsletter or other information besides the annual general meeting?
The last meeting was actually just a year ago. Circumstances will take place as soon as we can get back together. So it is an annual meeting. It's normally held in time. We do.
We're losing your sound, Mr. Jack. I don't know if you can hear me, but we can't hear you.
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
No, yes, but you need to repeat what you just said in the last 2 minutes, because we only heard parts and parcels of it.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, just so you're aware, I'm currently in isolation, so that's why I'm not with you this morning. But as I was saying, we do have an annual meeting. It's normally held around about April time. This year we have delayed that because of obviously the current circumstances, but the meeting will be held shortly as soon as we can get back together. But in addition to that, Mr. Chairman, regular reports go out to our members with the statements, and at least quarterly we send out a very detailed report which Errol and his team prepare, giving returns and other comments about the pension fund, and those are very much welcomed, I think, by our members.
Thank you very much. How many customers or how many members decided to choose the early withdrawal option, roughly as a percentage or an amount?
Errol, I have got those figures in front of me, but it's quite difficult to look at a computer while I'm on here as well. Can you just answer that for me, please?
Yeah, in terms of the number of your members that chose to withdraw from the pension plan as a result of the recent changes to the pension law?
So they're currently, for the last cutoff date for the November NAV, there were just over 1,000. And I'm currently being informed that it's around 1,200 total of around 3,700 odd members.
Did you say you're using NAV for November last year, or?
No, sorry, May, obviously.
Oh, okay.
I apologize.
Okay.
May, yes.
So see, you had around 1,200 members that was looking to take advantage of the early withdrawal option.
That is correct.
And roughly what's the ballpark amount, just total, that would probably generate?
That would be, don't pin me down on the figure, we can get you an accurate figure, but that would be roughly 17 million CI dollars.
Okay. And have you guys started making any payments yet, or when do you anticipate?
Yes, we're very much in the process of making those payments to stay within the 45 days, yes.
Okay.
Does your defined contribution plan set out to provide your members with a specific retirement benefit, or are you just intent to providing what the pension legislation says is $1,000 a month to all your members at retirement?
So the defined contribution would be mandated as per the law, so how much the employer and employee add into the pot. The restrictions are on retirement age as to what the retiree could potentially do with it, because it has to go into a retirement savings account, and that's a vehicle that would be available to the retirees.
And is there a formula that is used to establish monthly, biannual, annual withdrawals from that retirement fund, or is that left entirely to the individual members?
That's actually legislated, if I'm not mistaken, how much a retiree could withdraw from that.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Are you trying to provide better than what the legislation says, which, as I recall, is $12,000 a year in a lump sum payment, as opposed to $1,000 a month? So we have some instances where there are people who get the $12,000 maybe in January, but in June they're showing up at NAU because they were living on $5,000 a month, and now the retirement benefit only provides $1,000. So I was just wondering if there was any attempt on your part to try to provide your members with better than the statutory requirement.
Stuart, do you mind if I refer that to you?
Yeah, no. As I said earlier, Mr. Chairman, you can't get out more than you pay in, and the amount that would be available for a retired person would firstly depend on how long they'd worked with us, how long they'd paid into our fund, what would be available. So it might well be that they don't get $1,000 a month.
That's what I was asking. There's a formula that you use to calculate, given that, accepting the fact that the person cannot put in more than they get out, more than they put in, plus whatever green there was to that in terms of investment return. But what I'm trying to find out is there a formula that you use to calculate, other than simply putting it in a retirement fund, and whether the management of that retirement fund is entirely the responsibility of the retiree, or does your plan provide a formula which assists him in managing that fund over a period of time based on some formula?
No. Yeah. In answer to your question, we don't manage those funds once the person's retired. The withdrawals are controlled in accordance with the laws and regulations, but we don't control that.
Okay. And under your plan, if you have $36,000 is the total of your pension fund, and you take out the $12,000 a year, your pension is terminated in 3 years.
Correct.
That is correct. Yeah. On the basis you can't get out more than you paid in.
Yeah, no, but I'm just trying, again, the whole purpose of this is try to educate the public on what their expectations are, because there are many people that we talk to who are under the preconceived idea that their pension is going to deliver a percentage of their salary for an extended period of time, if not for their total lifetime, which I understand is a defined benefits plan, not a defined contribution. But I think one of the things that I found disappointing when the idea of defined contributions was sold to the general public versus safety net defined benefits was the understanding that you only going to get what you put in, and when it's done.
Yeah, and that's one of the major problems with pensions worldwide now. That, you know, and when you retire, you don't know how long you're going to live for. And if there's a, you know, using your illustration, Mr. Chairman, you know, if there's 36,000 in there and you draw out 1,000 a month after 3 years, the money's spent.
Yeah.
You might only live for 2 years,
But
in which case money's left in the pot. Yeah,
Correct.
so
But
that's a good point, Mr. Chairman.
there are actuarial formulas based on life expectancy, right? Which some people use to divide whatever that sum is that they've collected into a monthly allowance so that it stretches over, that there's some control over the period of time. Because one of the reasons why we set up pension plans in the Cayman Islands was to reduce the number of people turning up at NAU. And I think what we're finding now is that in many of these defined contributions, because of life expectancy and other things, people are having to fall back on government because their pension is inadequate. And there's no...
I think, Mr. Chairman, yeah, the way to deal, you know, the sensible way to deal with that is you buy an annuity, which is, I think, what you're alluding to. So the capital that's available when you consolidate your pension at the end of your working life is used to buy an annuity. And the people providing the annuity use average life expectancies to dictate how much money you'll get a month. The problem with that is that the returns on annuities are dismally low these days because investment rates are very low, people are living a long time. And using your example, someone with 36,000 retiring in a pension fund, they'd probably end up with
$200 a month.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the problem. It goes back to this whole thing, you can't get more out than you pay in.
Yeah.
But annuities are a very poor way of getting the money back out now.
And they're
because
also
of potential life expectancy.
They're kind of difficult to get locally too, aren't they?
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah, it's not. So, okay. Thank you. Very helpful, sir.
Just looking back at the investment profile of your company, looking at the financial statements, first of all, happy to see that you are invested in some Cayman entities, so that's actually pretty good. But generally speaking, how do you choose in terms of where to look at in terms of your investments, and what's the process that goes through that in terms of picking what vehicles to choose? I'm not going to get into what you choose because clearly that's proprietary, but just to kind of understand the mindset that goes with it.
Thank you for the question.
I'm going to defer to Errol on this, but just first of all, I'm pleased to acknowledge that you've noted that we do like to invest locally. We do hold some CUC stock. There's a very, very small element of CNC stock in there. I think it's about 124,000 now. So we deliberately don't invest heavily in our own company, despite the fact it's probably the best investment we've ever had in our pension fund. But Errol, I think you're best placed to answer these questions.
You're talking to a friendly audience when it comes to investing in pension funds locally, sir.
I know. Thank you.
Thank you. So the main driver is long-term, obviously, and one of the things we avoid is market timing. So we really take the long-term approach, and I think that's very reflective in the performance. One of the main issues that arise are in market downturns is when there is a forced requirement to take realized losses. And that's always an issue because it will never allow, when there's a market recovery, to actually gain back what was lost in those stress times. Normally after major market events, markets rise significantly. Look at 2008, and I think the performance of the fund are very reflective of that, and narrowly track what the overall market has done. One of the main aspects that we do is stay with US dollar and reduce the potential FX risk to a significant extent. Obviously, we do look at some opportunities in other areas of the investment realm, but we like to stay closer to home, so that mainly US-based, and we choose very deliberate vehicles that are very low in cost, if any at all, if possible, that do a very good job in tracking the indices that we favor based on the analysis that we do. And one of the current constraints is that there's only so much of the allowable allocation within the pension fund to allocate locally, so that's and there's not a whole lot of publicly listed local companies either. So those are some of the restrictions there, and those are not easily solvable, obviously. So no, we take the long-term approach. We do not conform to any market timing or anything like that, and as a result, that has in mind the longevity of the fund, as well as the performance for the members when they retire. That is as close as possible to what the market can offer them should they have decided to invest themselves in a similar matter.
Thanks very much. Just looking at the current situation and seeing the public's interest now surrounding pensions, and I guess you'd have heard some of the complaints, and in some cases, maybe some of the compliments. What does your organization see as things that we can do as policymakers ultimately to improve the process or to improve public education with regards to pensions? Because ultimately we're all in the same boat, and like I said, we want this to be as informative as possible to the general public. So like, what areas do you see maybe for areas for improvement, or some things that you think that we probably may even need to do away with? I mean, what would your take be on that? I haven't been in this business now for about more than 20 years, I believe.
I think, Mr. Chairman, the revision of the pension law, I think that needs to be brought forward. Maybe needs to have a rethink and a relook at that. We were talking earlier on about the constraints to the way that we are able to invest. So I think it would be good to bring that forward and get the legislation put in place to change some of the current restrictions. From our point of view, and both Errol and myself, we have experience of many other pension funds as well. Given the international constraints for pension funds these days, I think our own, and being very selfish here and just talking about our own fund, I think our own fund is actually doing a good job for its members. A little bit more flexibility on how we invest our funds would enable us, I think, to do a bit better on the investment front. But I think our fund is serving our members probably as well as any fund could in the current circumstances.
We were also, I think I can say, disappointed yesterday to hear from the administrators in government that there are still sections of the 2016 law that have not been commenced. And we made a suggestion to them that we think there's a certain amount of urgency in getting the law, because it was passed with a lot of fanfare and a lot of need and urgency. And to learn here that 5-6 years later, there are even sections of it that have not yet commenced. And one of the key areas, the changes to the investment regulations, has not been completed. So we did ask them to put some urgency in getting those things done. I must tell you that I don't have a lot of comfort in the response for that commitment, that it is likely to be done. So maybe we could encourage the individual pension plans to lean on the government to get the legislation commenced so that we can improve the environment in which the pension plans are functioning.
We'll certainly do that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the witness,
Can you state how many of your clients have opted for the minimum withdrawal, i.e. the up to $10,000 per pension fund, versus those who have opted to take the minimum plus 25%? Is it a balanced withdrawal, or are our clients sort of running to one option more than the other?
Thank you for the question. I will have to defer that. I don't have the exact figures with me, and I'll have to liaise with the administrator to give you an accurate figure of that.
That's fine.
Just email it to Vanessa Webb, the same address that we've been calling.
Perfect.
Just to follow up, Mr. Chairman, a lot of discussion in the public domain now is concerning the value of their pension funds, and I think that realization has come now that they have the opportunity to withdraw from it. They're actually looking at their statement, and they're seeing perhaps the kind of losses that their pension funds may have suffered, certainly within the first quarter of 2020, but arguably over the last 5 or 10 years. The impact of the corona pandemic has caused the average pension fund value to plummet by, I think, 15% in quarter 1, 2020. The majority of these losses took place in March, when the average pension fund fell by a little over 11%. I think the coronavirus wiped out nearly 8% off the FTSE 100 in a single day. Prior to the coronavirus, 2018, we had the triple threat. We had Trump, we had Brexit, and we had the slowdown in China, which also had an impact on pension fund performances. I believe the figures show that the average pension fund suffered a fall of 7.3 during the fourth quarter of 2018, leaving pension funds down by just over 6% for the calendar year. So we accept that there are these cyclical trends that impact your earnings, plus or minus, in any market trade, pension or otherwise. Pensioners have, for a long time, been urged not to withdraw large amounts of cash from their investment pots, particularly when the markets are in crisis. The general rule of thumb is ride it out, wait for the market to correct itself and benefit from the upswing. When we look at pensions for retirees, persons facing retirement within the next 10 years or shorter, it'll be harder for them to make up any losses via future market growth than it would be for the younger pensioner. Through the virtue of their age, they have many years in which they can benefit from a market recovery. For those persons who today complain that pension values will yield very little at retirement when they do retire compared to their contributions, what is the reality for the value of most individual pension funds after they take advantage of this present withdrawal option?
So I think I can answer that in a more generalized approach. It's an inherent flaw of a defined contribution plan, especially if you're very close to retirement age, when there's a market downturn and you get your lump sum right on that moment. So that's the general issue with such a fund, and that's globally. You're absolutely correct in stating that the longer term would allow to recover any losses that were realized, specifically recently with the COVID-19 or the triple threat, as you explained it, or 2008 for that matter. So the longer term approach would definitely benefit any member. Having said that, I think what would be ideal is looking at certain buckets and or age brackets as to the maximum allowable risk that somebody is able to take, to at least secure at certain intervals some of the realized gains or the gains that were part of that member's contribution.
Just thank you for that. Just a follow-up. Previous pension withdrawal options that were legislated by the government carried a repayment requirement. Whatever you withdraw, you're required to repay that to the fund so that the fund doesn't necessarily lose its long-term value. In this COVID-19 withdrawal relief package, there is no obligation to the pensioner to repay those pension funds. Whilst we have seen success, if we will, in the investment performance of your fund and others, what risk do pensioners sort of invite onto themselves by not replacing that value in which they withdrew during the relief withdrawal? Are they putting themselves at a future disadvantage, or are you, and I accept you don't have a crystal ball, but as investment managers, are you confident enough that there is a possibility that even with the withdrawals and given market forecasts or expectations, pensioners still can potentially recoup those losses and otherwise benefit at retirement? Is there a viewpoint either way?
Maybe, Mr. Chairman, I could just start to answer that. Let me just say that when I heard the proposal from government to allow these withdrawals, I wrote to government in very strong terms, expressing my concern about the proposal. Because, as I said at the outset of this conversation, Mr. Chairman, I see, and our management see pensions as a long-term commitment, and the withdrawals that were approved by government came at probably the worst possible time for any member, because the values were down, and therefore taking those monies out at that particular time was always going to be hugely detrimental to that individual's long-term pension fund. And indeed, it has an impact on the overall pension fund. The critical mass of our pension fund is going to be reduced by at least a third. So it will have an effect on all members, but particularly for those that withdraw funds. In answer to your question, it will have a significant and irreversible impact upon their long-term pension.
Mr. Chairman, just one final follow-up in that regard. The Cayman Islands economy sometimes operates in a different fashion than the global economy. And I take, for example, the development boom that the Cayman Islands has certainly experienced 2017, 2018, and certainly prior to COVID. The development outlook for the Cayman Islands was hugely very positive, with a number of major projects on the books. It has been offered up for some time that pension funds could or should be allowed to diversify their investment portfolio by investing in local assets. Initially, when the idea was proffered up, the comeback was, well, there is no vehicle that allows pension funds to invest in local assets. There was no real estate fund, there was no infrastructure fund, there was no established mechanism in which a pension fund could direct their investment portfolio to invest in, say, a Cayman infrastructure fund for roads or docks or airports of that like. There has been some interest, and I don't know how progressed those interests are, in the development of real estate funds in the Cayman Islands. I think, without calling any, well, I have to call a name, I think there was an interest demonstrated by NCB Group and others in establishing a real estate fund that would otherwise invest in various local projects. There was also talk about the establishment of an infrastructure fund that would otherwise invest in government capital projects and the like. Is that a viable option in today's realm? Are you aware of any such mechanisms that would allow pension funds to make those or add those investments to its overall investment portfolio? Or what is required? If not, what is required to make it happen?
I mean, certainly that is a possibility in a lot of other jurisdictions, like the UK. Pension funds are allowed to invest in property development funds and in property. It is certainly something that I think should be considered here. There is no reason why government couldn't set up an infrastructure fund. Many years ago, when with others I was looking at possibilities of funding the airport, suggestions were made that some kind of fund be set up to fund the development of our airport. And local investors could have invested in that, including pension funds. So I think that's a very valid opportunity. Certainly, as you've suggested, the economy here has done very well, and I think over the next few years it will do extremely well. So that is certainly an area that I think has opportunities, both for the island in general, but also for the pension funds to invest locally in opportunities that I think exist in Cayman. Errol, would you like to make comment on that? It's very much your specialised area.
No, I fully agree with that. Obviously, we will review all the prospectus and projected revenue streams and or potential results and of these investments. But yeah, that will be very welcome. It's, as we said before, we like to invest locally, but there are certain constraints around that. And if there's more possibility of doing that, and I fully agree with the economy doing very well in the future, even though we're currently at a very unusual time. But as with any downturn, that will pass. So yes, I would definitely be favorable to those ideas. Yeah.
Thank you to the witnesses.
I take the opportunity, Mr. Dack and Mr. Errol, selling a try with that funny word. I want to thank you all very much for your participation and for taking the time to coming here and giving evidence. And I think we had a very productive session, and I think we learned a lot, and we thank you very much. So have a great day. Stay safe, stay home, wear a mask if you come out in public.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we appreciate the opportunity to speak with the meeting this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. The meeting is suspended until 1:30. Yeah. My apologies.